And we are back with Robin Wright, Angela Rye, Mark Lilla, and Roy Blunt Jr. Mark, I want to come back to you to ask about, again, going forward. It does seem as though the Trump strategy right now is go to your base and play this game of white identity politics. Will it reinforce a kind of diehard opposition on the left? What should the left do? Your book is written as you put it, as a one future liberal. You don't want them to play identity politics, but what do you do if the other side is playing identity politics?
Well, the first thing you have to recognize is that it works for them and it doesn't work for us. But beyond that, I think what's important here, and it showed up in Robin Wright's article, is that there's some glue that's missing in this country, something that keeps us together. It's not so much that we're loggerheads, but we're drifting apart. There once used to be a Democratic vision, a Democratic Party vision, a liberal vision of what we stood for as a nation, what made us citizens, how we could work together in a political way on the basis of solidarity and equal protection. Then there was a Reagan view, which was that the less government, the better. We're all by ourselves in our families and churches, and good luck to you. That vision was destroyed by Donald Trump. He destroyed Reagan's party. And now neither party and neither ideology. And in a sense, you're saying liberals never had a response to Reagan's vision. They just kind of retreated into identity politics. Exactly. That was a time, you see, Reagan's vision was anti-political. And it was a time for liberals to make the case for democratic political life and the legitimacy of government and the legitimacy of helping each other out. And by retreating, they made a tactical mistake, I think. And I don't think many people have a sense, and I don't think Democrats have a sense, of what their vision of the future is. I mean, if you listen to the rhetoric of JFK or FDR or Reagan, you very quickly get a sense of what kind of world they want to create. We don't have that. Without a national narrative, without ideologies that even bring parties together, we become like elementary particles flying apart, and that's when trouble starts. Angela Rye, how do you bring the Democrats or the country together?
Well, I think first on the Democratic part, obviously, as a Democrat, at least someone who votes Democrat, I disagree a little bit. I think recently they've introduced a plan that leans more into economics, which, of course, is a more unifying principle. And I think that there's a struggle when you are known to be a big tent. Right, there are a lot of different interests that you have to cater to. And I think that historically Democrats have struggled to figure out what is that sweet spot. As well as this country that some folks call melting pot. I prefer jambalaya because we're all different, and I like that we can appreciate differences. The only path forward, I think, is to begin to tell the truth about our history. It's one that is troubled. It's one that is challenging, full of conflicts, and full of hypocrisy. And until we can embrace what that narrative is, as uncomfortable as it might be for some, we're not going to get further ahead.
Robin Wright, that seems to me to be a recipe for more conflict, because as we tell that history, there are a lot of people who will say that's not my history, and as Roy Blunt was saying, that's, you know, that you're politicizing it, or I just feel like you're going to get a backlash.
Well, we haven't resolved many of the issues that surfaced during the Civil War, including how do you ensure people of color not only voting rights but equal rights. And so there are a number of haunting questions that still have to be addressed. The 14th Amendment is still deeply divisive in this country. One of the things that's striking about parties is if you look at the period that in the run-up to the Civil War, you saw the disintegration of the two parties, the disintegration of the Whig Party that opened the way for the Republicans and the emergence of Abraham Lincoln, and the Democrats dividing into Northern and Southern Democrats. That there are some kind of uncanny parallels and some haunting questions that this nation has not moved together to try to resolve, and it plays out in this issue of statues. How ironic, pieces of steel.
Roy Blunt, you covered the civil rights movement, the early 60s. You interviewed Martin Luther King. It seems to me Robin Wright's article really suggests that what we might end up with is not another civil war, but another period like the late 50s and 60s, where you had, you know, deep political divisions, some violence, a kind of conflict that didn't seem like it could be mediated. What seems similar and what seems different?
Well, I was living in the South then, and you had majority of white people were on the wrong side, and so were majority of the governors and the police. But you had the national level. In the White House, we had Kennedy and Johnson, and they were pretty good. But now we have all the way to the top. It's on the wrong side. I mean, we've got a president who can't tell the difference between Nazis and anti-Nazis. Yeah. And that's very unsettling, very confusing, and very encouraging to the Nazis. And so, in some ways, it's more indefinite and scarier now. I think people haven't. I don't even want to get into shooting, but there was lots of that in the civil rights movement, and there are lots of guns out there now.
On that sobering note, we have to leave this. Thank you all. Next on GPS, from Charlottesville to Spain, cars and trucks used as weapons. Peter Bergen will tell us how we should think of this new